Hello everyone, I'm finally here. I do apologise. Better late than never though, surely? Welcome, one and all, to the post-race Chinwag for the 2022 Italian Grand Prix. Grazie ragazzi! Finally, as Kimi Raikkonen would say, fucking finally, he's here. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for having patience with me. You know what, like, preparing the assets, preparing the graphics for this stream, obviously, now that Nick's got points as well, that kind of ruins the tessellation. I'm going to have to reintroduce Nico Hulkenberg, even though he's not scored a point. I'm going to have to reintroduce him down the line. And also, I needed to cut out his headshot and all that, so I didn't pre-prepare for how long that would take. But anyway, that's my terrible excuse out of the way. Thank you all for coming. And should we get into it? Should we talk about it? Should we talk all about the Italian Grand Prix? Starting first of all with your rating out of 10, live chat. Talk to me. I know some of you watch this after the fact, so you're just going to have to just think in your own head what you'd rate this race out of 10. Again, 5 is like a bang average race, straight down the middle. 10 is perfection. 1 is dead. You know what I mean? Some 4s, 5s, 6s. All right, let's. I'll use that live chat response to set up a poll, and then we'll get an actual kind of more specific number. So rating out of 10. I can only do 4 options in the poll, so I'm going to do a 4 or lower, 5, 6. There's no way someone's given that a 7. Okay, no, you could. No, okay. So 7. Sorry, there's no way someone's giving it higher than 7, but I'm going to put 7 or higher anyway. So let me know what you thought of that race out of 10. Obviously, not just the ending, because it did end in a way that wasn't particularly entertaining. I think we can all agree on that. I think we can all agree that no one wants to see races end under a safety car, but we will get into that. We will get into that because I'm sure for plenty of you that opened up a few wounds from last year. Okay, so the majority is a 5 or a 6. Some 7 or higher. Fair play. For me, I'm giving it, and at the time, if you watched the last lap, thank you for watching. We were doing our little ratings afterwards, and I gave it a 6. I watched the extended highlights that Sky Sports have been putting out, which I like actually. I like having an extended highlight to watch after the fact, because when we're doing the live show, there's a lot going on, and it's not like pure focus on exactly what's happening because you're having conversations. But it's nice to watch it with the full commentary after the fact. And for me, it's a 4. I was debating between 4 and 5, but for me, 5 is bang average. For me, 5 is bang average, and I thought that was a below average race. Sorry. I think it was more exciting because when I was watching the race live, I was chatting with people, and but maybe it was a bit harsh, but I just think it was a bit below average. I think average is based off of like what we've seen over this season. I think the race has been good this year, so I think that raises the bar for what average is, and I think this was. It had its moments. It was a race of moments, kind of like Spa. But I've given it a 4. I was thinking 5, and then I was like, actually, no. Was this a bang average race? I think this was slightly below average. And I'm not divvying out points either, like 0.5. 4.7, no. So yeah, I'm in the 20% crowd, it seems. But either way, it's still better than watching paint dry. So I still enjoyed my afternoon. It's the correct rating. Okay, it's fine. But again, I think as well, expectations going into Monza is that it will deliver a banger, and it just didn't. We didn't get that wheel-to-wheel battle for the two at the front because that change in position happened in the pit stops. There was a big DRS train. It's a couple of scraps. It wasn't great. But never mind. Never mind. We will move on. Now, let's have a look at the race results from this Italian Grand Prix. And as you can see, Max Verstappen wins ahead of Charles Leclerc. George Russell, another podium. Mr. Podium. How many podiums has George got this year? I can just ask you. You lot in the chat will let me know. Carlos Sainz recovers to P4. Fantastic drive from him. It's 7 now. Wow. 7 podiums in... That was round 16, wasn't it? So, blimey. Killing it. Lewis Hamilton recovering as well. Was impressed, actually. I didn't think he would be able to recover as well as he did, given the apparent lack of competitive pace of that Mercedes relative to, the car Sainz had under him. Perez P6 with the fastest lap. Lando Norris P7. Pierre Gasly P8. And Nick the Goat. So everyone does the Latifi meme. So I think we should make Nick the Goat a thing, especially if he is in the seat next year. Now, to be obviously, look, the Goat meme comes from the fact that Latifi isn't very good, but Nick DeVries is very good, and he scored points on his debut in a Williams late call up. Incredible, very impressive. And Zhou Guanyu was the last driver to score a point, benefiting obviously from Daniel Ricciardo's retirement in the end, so he was able to sneak in and grab a point. He's a world champion. But there you go. Right, there's a bit to unpack in this race, isn't there? I feel like this is going to be a long one. This is why I've got some hydration. Don't forget to hydrate yourselves, everyone. Okay, it's very important. Thank you, Reese, mate. Appreciate it. Do you think Danny is working undercover for Red Bull? No. That's one of the more illogical conspiracy theories. But no, cheers, Reese. Appreciate it, mate. Right. Okay. Let's take a look at the winners and losers. Starting with mine, then we'll look at yours. So looking through the whole weekend, obviously prioritising what happened yesterday, because points won on Sunday, but trying to factor in qualifying and, just generally over the course of the weekend, best, worst weekends. So, for me, they are as follows. Driver W of the weekend is, of course, Nick DeVries. Shout out Hamilton. Lewis, I thought really impressed with his drive. And obviously Max. Didn't put foot wrong. Couldn't ask any more. There's plenty of other people I could put up there as well, but I'm only mentioning 3. So deal with it. Team W of the weekend, I've gone Red Bull. Because that car was just something else. As much as Perez, as much as Checo wasn't able to get that performance out and not move through. In the hands of Max, that car was just untouchable, regardless. Mercedes, I put up there. I put McLaren as well. As much as Daniel Ricciardo did pull over in the end, Checo did have the brake issue as well. So, as much as Ricciardo had to pull over and stop because of an engine issue, their performance was really impressive. They were very close to getting good points on the boards. So I'm giving that a shout. L of the weekend goes without saying. K-Mag also had a bit of a messy one, didn't he? He kept invalidating his laps in qualifying and then caught damage to his diffuser early doors. And then I put Checo as well. Obviously, it's unfortunate with the brake issue to say how much that affected his race. But at the end of the day, he also had P6 and fastest lap. So whatever that problem was, I think remedied himself itself very much. And for him to finish P6 in the Red Bull, I can't completely just be like, oh, it's just brake problem. I mean, because it was a problem for a period, but then he carried on. Vettel also, I heard about this Aston Martin. We'll talk about that when we get to Aston. I haven't seen it though. Apparently, the Aston Martin boys had a bit of a skirmish at some point. Mick also had a good race. Yeah, I agree. P12 in the end in a Haas that wasn't very quick and had barely any practice. That's a fair shout as well. And then Team L, obviously Aston Martin, both cars not finishing is very bad. But Alpine, I was shocked at their lack of performance because, that car's quick in a straight line, but I don't know, tyres, or I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand why they were so bad. I thought this was a done deal for Alpine. I mean, you look at how quick they were, particularly Fernando was at Spa, able to qualify where he was. Ocon wasn't able to make the moves through the field either, so I was quite surprised by that. And then Haas, obviously shocking qualifying all round. They weren't able to give Mick a car to practice in either, and just a weekend to forget. The Alonso wow was, it definitely did. We did last lap, Arif was saying, like, it gives kind of GP3 engine flashbacks. I think obviously now that, Alonso knows his future isn't with that team anymore, I do wonder if we'll see a bit more of a classic vocal Fernando Alonso, because look, he's got history. GP2 engine, sorry, not GP3 engine. It might as well be a GP3 engine. Oh, sassy Alonso. So those are mine, but yours, see how similar they are? Yeah, pretty much the same. You gave Aston Martin an overwhelming Team L of the weekend, which is fair enough. Again, both cars didn't finish, so I get that. Nick DeVries gets 69% of the vote. I did forget in the poll to change the name from Albon to DeVries, but Albon got 69% of the vote, so I'm assuming you were going for DeVries. I know, it's very nice, isn't it? Verstappen, Sainz, Hamilton all getting honourable mentions as well. Team W is a bit more evenly spread. So you got Red Bull, you got Mercedes, you got Ferrari, you got Williams getting a shout out as well. So Williams were able to nick denies. Only 67% of the vote went to Latifi, which I was quite surprised about. Ricciardo and Magnussen got exactly the same number of votes, on 8%. Vettel, Perez as well. There you go. That's what you lot thought. And Alpine got a fair few shouts in the Team L of the weekend as well. There you go. I mean, look, obviously Ricciardo's weekend was actually quite good. It was just, it wasn't his fault what happened. But when you say L, that's up to interpretation. I try and do it based on what I think the team versus and what I think the driver was responsible for, whether it's good or bad. But each to their own, So, where does that leave the championship? Well, Max Verstappen now has elongated his lead to 116 points, which is, we've got rounds 17, 18, 19, 20 and 22. We've got 5 to go. 116 points. So what's the deal next race? Singapore. If Verstappen, because the maximum amount of points you can score is 26. So 26 times. So if Max wins, Leclerc needs top 6. Yeah, you lot can just. I'm sure some of you have done the maths. Oh yeah, sprint as well. Where's the sprint? Is it Interlagos? I can't actually remember where the sprint's going to be this year. Cheers, Elliot, mate. Thank you. Latifi more in the mud than West. Yeah, excuse me. P.S. Definitely a foul. Are you mad, Elliot? Come on now. I appreciate it, but that's straight delusion, I'm afraid, mate. I'm just going to have to call that out. I'm sorry. Foul, Mendy. you having a bubble? Elliot, come on. Yeah, so I suppose with the sprint race points, there's 164 points up for grabs. Okay, yeah. So he's got 116 lead, 164 up for grabs. So right, so say Max scores 26 points next week and Leclerc doesn't score any, then that lead is 142 points. 142, and then was it 164 take away 25 is 139. So if Max wins and gets fastest lap and Charles doesn't finish in Singapore, then he wins the championship, right? I don't know. I'll try to do this mental maths here, and it's not really... Yeah, I think that makes sense. But yeah, Verstappen's commanding lead will soon be a victory. Let's just be honest. It's mad how big that gap is now, considering. But also, I think we can say now that as much as the Ferrari strategy blunders have, particularly at the start of the season, really inhibited Leclerc's ability to challenge. Because you've got to remember as well, if Leclerc's getting those good results, he's getting those wins, he's also taking points away from Max. Not only scoring points himself, but also taking those victory points away from Max. You got to say that I just think that Red Bull package would have been too much in the end anyway. That Red Bull Verstappen package was just always going to be, I think, an impossible mountain to overturn, even without the Ferrari strategy issues. Yeah, I know I missed out Hülkenberg, but I will bring back Hülkenberg to the standings because now it's not symmetrical anymore, okay? It really bothers me, but I didn't want to waste any more time when we get the stream going. Because then I'd have to move Gasly down to below Bottas and then everyone else up. It's just, no. Next week, all right? It's fine. Thank you, Vince, mate. Appreciate it. Nick, for Hamilton's seat when he's gone. Look, I mean, I read... Well, I didn't read. So to be fair, I just saw a headline from an article on the race, I think, talking about Alpine wanting to test Nick DeVries. The thing is, right, he's put himself in the shop window here, Nick. It's just mad. I just can't believe it. I just can't believe how much of a better job he did than Latifi. But we'll get into that. Any more? There's just a few moves. So Gasly's moved up a little bit, scored those 4 points. Who else? Is there really any other kind of benefit? Joe's got an extra point now, so he's ahead of Lance. And yeah, there was a fairly kind of even spread amongst the top lot. Cheers, Capital Stupidity. Thank you very much, mate. Great name. Mixed Radio, when he got told the race went behind the safety car. I haven't heard that, actually. But I'm assuming, yeah, it was... because he was making moves through, wasn't he? He was. Where did Mick finish? P... that's the wrong graphic, this one. He finished P12 in the end, didn't he? Yeah, there you go. Mad. Right, let's talk about the race then. We'll kind of just go through and then we'll speak more specifically about certain instances. He was sad. That's sad. That makes me feel sad, Joseph, that he was sad. I've got a lot of time for Mick, but I still think he needs to show more. And we'll say, assuming. I said assuming, yes, I did, Sarah. Did I? Assuming. Joseph, you want to type something? What do you mean? Where would Albon have finished? It's certainly a question, looking at the results. But, right, so what happened off the start? So Lando had a shocker off the start, bogged down. Other than that, there was a little bit of contact, wasn't there, towards the back. I think that's where K-Mag picked up the damage. Hamilton, I think, got caught up in something. He was right at the back towards the start. did well, because that's always the problem when you are starting at the back. It's very easy to get caught up in incidents, and which I think makes Lewis's recovery drive through the field in that Mercedes, which isn't a Ferrari, isn't a Red Bull, even more impressive to me. But yeah, that at the start. What else? Wasn't really too much. You had obviously Ricciardo holding up that train and Gasly having a pop at him, as he was for most of the race in the end. That just allowed kind of Russell, Leclerc and Verstappen to kind of... Well, Verstappen was making his way through, wasn't it? It was Leclerc and Russell kind of checking out at the start, and then Max was just making up those places pronto. Which again, look, Max just... I'm sure I saw something on Twitter. Max's starting positions in the last few races, in the last 5 races that he's won, his starting positions have been all over the place. Yet he's still able to find a way to win. It is bloody impressive. What did you have? This is what I mean, because this is why I say this race wasn't. There were moments. I feel like I want to get up the highlights. I need to watch the highlights again. No, it's not Lights Out, Crofty, and away we go. Because you had it's just replaying the start. Red Bull happy, blah blah blah. Yeah, and then Vettel just stopped. There wasn't really much going on until Vettel stopped. And then obviously you had the VSC, which is when Charles came in. Which again, look, I think it's one of them that it's easy to look at Ferrari making a decision and going from first to second, not winning the race and being like, oh, they blundered again. But actually, do I think Ferrari, putting that medium tyre on at that stage instead of the hard didn't seem to have pace looking at other cars. So was medium probably the right call? I mean, the Pirelli recommendations were all... I remember on screen, they were saying the Pirelli recommendations were both one-stops. It was either soft to hard or medium to hard. But obviously... Cheers, Joe. Obviously, Pirelli are going to back their own hard tyre, but obviously the data might, because it's Monza is a low tyre wear track, right? So they went for it. It was mad at the end as well when Leclerc's on the softs, Verstappen's on the mediums, and he's making no inroads. That gap was growing for a bit, and then it closed down to he knocked about 2.5 seconds off of that gap over that kind of total stint, which is just it's pretty crazy, because it's one of them that I think whatever Ferrari would have done, I don't think they would have been able to strategize around a Max Verstappen Red Bull win. We'll never know for sure, but we can only speculate, can't we? Vettel stopped. Just trying to... This is what I mean. There just wasn't obviously again they gave Leclerc a good pit stop. Just came out ahead. He was a bit unlucky. You had a few lockups, Lando locked up, didn't he? And Lando went wide. Gasly did the same. It's just one of them races where Lewis was kind of chipping away, kind of making his way through the field. Not at the same rate Sainz was able to, but I think again that reflects kind of the car that Lewis has and Mercedes have. You see what that gap was between George and Max and Charles in the end, and you just think there's clearly there was no point fighting. When George got overtaken by Max, what's the point in him fighting? There's literally nothing. There's just no point. It's a fruitless endeavour. We'd love to see it. We wouldn't. And the VSC didn't help Ferrari. That is true. But again, I just think the pace wasn't there in the end. At the end of the day, so that all happened. And obviously, Alonso retired because he thought his car was broken, and then I think it was a water pressure issue, wasn't it? there was a few. Obviously, you had Lewis's double overtake, which was very good. I thought that was, that in terms of the Silverstone one, in terms of positioning your car, you're seeing cars ahead of you scrapping, and because Lewis did take, he kind of, shortened the turn into turn one, didn't he? And then he gave him more room to get on the power earlier, coming out of turn two. So that was a cracking move from Lewis again. Great car positioning, double overtake, smashed it. And was there much more? Yeah, I mean, again, there was no battle at the front because it all happened. It changed positions under pit stops. Yeah, Lando's had an awful stop, didn't he? It's like a 5-second stop. It was almost kind of vibes of Monza last year, when obviously Verstappen and Hamilton had like a 7 and an 11-second stop or something, and then they just came together, and it was like Lando had a 5-second stop, and then that just caused it all to kind of converge into that turn 1, turn 2 chicane. So yeah, that was pretty mad. And then obviously Daniel stopped. And the safety car came out, and the race finished under the safety car. In the name of safety. Okay, should we talk about the safety car? Let's go main screen, all right? Wide Tommo. Hang on, can I do? Does this work? Damn, boy, he wide. Yeah, I'll just talk about it like this. There we go. Wide Tommo. All right, let's talk. Should we talk about safety? Damn, boy, he's thick. I love Anthony Fantano, man. I actually genuinely watch his stuff as well. He's anyway, right. Let's talk all about the safety car. Flashbacks, right? Flashbacks. See, this is where if I had a mixer or something on my Go XLR, I would have done a good voice effect, but never mind. I do watch Melon, yeah, I do. I don't even know much about music. I just find him really interesting and funny. Right, so lap 47. Daniel Ricciardo pulls up between the two. I'd never know. Right? I need to learn these corner names, man. So Monza corner. Is it the two Lesmos? Two Lesmos? Is it? Yeah, it is. Come on. Knowledge, bruv. Cheers, Guy, mate. Thank you very much. Up the last lap. Indeed, Guy. Indeed. Spot on. Yeah, so Daniel pulled up on the inside of the track between the two Lesmos. Safety car. Lap 47 of 53. So you've got, I don't know where Max was on track relative to Daniel at that time. It was safety car minimal, obviously, because there was no easy way of recovering that car. Where he stopped on track, he didn't stop on the outside. So as soon as that car stops, any effort to get the car moving would require either marshals to push it across the track, or for the cherry picker, which is what happened in the end, to drive onto the track, across the track, pick the car up. But right, there was no easy way of pushing it away. Here we go, Carlos. Here we go. So I think once that is clear, because there's plenty of incidents where the whole recovery of the car can happen off track. It's one of them that as soon as you know you have to get the cherry picker out, and it looks like basically the car wasn't in neutral, so they couldn't push the car. As soon as it becomes clear that the machinery has to come on track, in my opinion, you have to red flag the race. Because we've had so many incidents through the years, and I'm not even going to mention the Gilles Bianchi one, right? Because there were other factors. You had rain playing a big part in that. But at the end of the day, when you got machinery on track, and we've seen this, we saw this a lot. I know kind of a lot of people are memeing about, oh, bring Massey back. But Massey was guilty of sending out cars on track that were going at not racing speed, but quick, right? With machinery on track. The thing is, and I think something that's easy to overlook is that these cars, even behind the safety car, these cars are going like the clappers, right? Bloody, what's his face? Who's the... I completely forgot his name. The guy who drives the safety car. Burnt Mylander, that's it. Burnt Mylander. I remember before you told me. Because his name's quite long to spell, I suppose. You watch, right, when he's driving that safety car, he's pushing, yeah? He's pushing. He has to push. And the F1 car is just... They're just dawdling along, right? But actually, they're going very quick. And sure, like going past that incident, slow down, fine. But the problem is that, especially through a corner like the two Lesmos, where they are kind of tight corners, and we saw from the helicopter aerial shot over the top, you had, I think it was Nick actually, who kind of must have been a bit unsighted, or the car in front of him slowed more than he expected, and he kind of... Look, I just think if you have to get machinery on track, I just think that... And I'm not saying, like, if it's kind of... There's definitely a conversation there about, okay, so say a car's DNF pulled off track, and it's on the outside of the track, and it's... you've got a gravel trap between where the car is and where the track is, and then machinery, the machinery coming on the track doesn't actually go on the surface, on the asphalt. It just goes on and picks the car up. Maybe you could argue then, maybe that's one, it's like, okay, maybe there's some nuance there. Maybe it doesn't merit a red flag if the weather conditions, like if it's dry, if, everyone's been given plenty of opportunity and time to see. It's one of them, I don't think you've got you can never have a hard and... Well, you can with certain things, but I think with that, it's like... But if you have to have the machinery drive on track and the cars drive right next to it, I just think that's like... That's just sketchy, man. I think what, like, if you watch on Twitter, the video's up there if you haven't seen it. If it's on the actual racing track, I just think that's too dangerous, man. I just think that's too dangerous. And I think as well, then there's obviously a conversation. Well, okay, there's a few things to break down here, isn't there? So that's my opinion in terms of the recovery, and whether it's lap 2 or lap 52. I think for me that would be a fair rule. If they introduce that rule, I'd be like, cool. I'd be happy with that. Then obviously you've got the whole why it took so long to recover the car anyway. Now, from what I've seen, and again, like, look this stuff up yourself if you want to kind of clarify, but from what I've seen, from what things I've kind of read from sources that I trust, a few things is like the safety car isn't obliged to pick up the leader. It just goes out and then it picks up whoever it picks up, and obviously the fact that it picked up George and not Max meant that made that queue a bit messy. Yeah, maybe that's something that needs to be looked into. I don't know, maybe. I think that, yeah, the fact that it took, because obviously the marshals thought they'd have been able to push the car, but then they weren't able to. And again, I think as soon as you've got to get machinery on track, I think that's the time to drop a red, in my opinion, if you have to get machinery on track. But then the question around neutralising a race right at the end to give time to recover a car, because we see it, I think it's in NASCAR, which is where they'll like red flag the race and add laps or something. Now, obviously, you can't... It's something like that. I'm not sure if that's exactly it, but there's something around, I think, in IndyCar as well. The idea is that you can just refuel the cars a little bit and let them go. Obviously, in F1, you can't refuel, but then could, like, for example, say you dropped a red flag and then wanted to do like extra laps, add extra laps on at the end, would you be able to do that? Because obviously you can bring the cars into the pit lane and then obviously change the tyres so everyone's on softs for like a sprint at the end, basically. And then you could add some more fuel. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to. I mean, they add finite small amounts of fuel in qualifying to the cars, so I don't know. And yeah, Formula E has added time. I think when it comes to red flags, right, we the way it seems to be written in the rules, and my understanding of it has always been the red flag only should be used to when there's like damage on track, like to the track, sorry, or a car can't be recovered, blah blah blah, right? It's mainly to do with damage on track, because usually they can recover a car, even if it's had quite a sizable shunt. They can usually recover a car quite quickly. I guess it depends on debris. I think debris is a big one, because it's one thing recovering the car, right? But it's another thing like brooming up all the debris. I think you're only allowed to fuel in the garage. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not sure exactly what the process is there, but I think there is a question. There is a topic to be discussed of whether we should also potentially use the red flag in certain situations to neutralise a race when it's coming to the crescendo. Because look, at the end of the day, right, motorsport doesn't exist in nature. Okay, so it's a human-made thing. We decided to go racing, and we decide on what the rules are, and whether it's, should you be allowed to pit under a safety car? Should you be allowed to pit under a VSC? That could be construed as unfair. Should, all 20 cars be allowed on track in Q1? Because what if someone blocks you? That could be seen as unfair. Should you be allowed to give your teammate a tow in qualifying? Because that could be there's so many things that, sport is always going to have. You're always going to have rules that can be interpreted as unfair. You can interpret being able to pit. You can interpret being able to change your tyres under a red flag as unfair. And we've seen drivers massively. We saw Stroll benefit massively from that at Monza last year, didn't we? Because he was able to pit. When we're talking about stuff that's happened in the past, right? When we're talking about yesterday, or when we're talking about Abu Dhabi 2021, we have to, when we're talking about rules, we have to just talk about not what the rules should be. We have to talk about what the rules were at the time of the event. But I think when we're looking forwards and when we're looking about talking about the future, we have to talk about things in what we want the rules to be. And I just think that it's one of them. Why do I wear a hat inside? So I don't have to do my hair. Because my hair's terrible when it's not got wax in it. So I just think that bringing out a red flag, and this is how I felt about the season finale last year. I thought that given the context, and I know this is the thing, right? This is the kind of hypocrisy in what I'm saying, because I've said so many times that you shouldn't officiate a sport differently depending on the context. So you can't put a safety car in early because it's season finale, right? Because that's in the rules. You have to, once you've decided on the rules, you have to stick by the rules, because that's what all the teams have agreed to. And that's what all the teams understand, right? But when it comes to this, I think there is place in the rules, and I know a few of you have mentioned that when there is only a certain amount of the race to go, you should be able to drop a red flag and neutralise the race. I think it neutralises the race. And some people will benefit because they might not have pitted, and they'll be like, whoop-de-doo, happy days. And some people won't benefit. But that's also the case with a safety car and pitting under a safety car. So, I just think that this is a problem that we all agreed on the problem. Nobody wants a race to finish under a safety car. Nobody's looking for that. But we just don't all agree on the solution. And we just need to focus on the problem. And then it's like, okay, what do we do now? So for me, I think that when there is, whether it's like 10% of the race to go, if there is an incident that can't clearly, at first glimpse, be dealt with within a certain number of laps of safety car, whether it's, again, we were talking about this on last lap, and Alva was saying like 2 laps, maybe 2's a bit short. I think if you're looking at an incident, right? So, say when Mick Schumacher dropped it in Monaco and obliterated his car, stuff everywhere, damage to a barrier as well. It's very clear looking at that's going to take more than 3-4 laps to recover, to clear up, okay? I think when you look at an incident, and you could say the same about Ricciardo, because it's difficult with Ricciardo because obviously the stewards thought they could push the car away, but then they realised they couldn't. But then the marshals. You can still look at that, and because of where it was on the track, they should have been able to realise quite quickly, this might be a difficult one to clear. I think once it's clear, again, I said this already, once it's clear, you're going to have to get machinery on track, on the asphalt. Then I think that's a red flag. But I wouldn't have a problem personally with, when it's maybe like 10% of racing distance to go and a shunt like that happens that you don't think you're going to be able to recover it in time, then I would be fine with that. I would be fine with it. And again, you can't just add extra laps because the cars can't refuel. Maybe there's because the cars carry, 110 kilos of fuel, and you need a 1 kilo fuel sample at the end. Maybe an alternative is to suggest, okay, the cars, you should increase that tolerance at the bottom to maybe like 5 kilos, give yourself a bit of extra fuel, and then I'm not like I ain't got the answer, but there's maybe something along those lines where people more intelligent than me can look at, okay, if we add 10 kilos of fuel, right? So it's 120 kilo fuel load, and you still have to have a sample at the end, but then if the race is extended, they take that into account. I don't know. It's going to add weight, but it's going to add 10 kilos to a car that's already weighs a ton. That's not going to make a huge difference. It's not going to make a noticeable difference adding 10 kilos. I thought the samples were all in kilos, not litres. Because volume can change, can't it, with temperature, right? But I think mass stays the same. But look, I think that's maybe a solution. Again, I think red flag when there's a certain amount of time left. Again, I think that's the way it should have gone last year at the season finale. I think there's fluid on the track, there's damage to a barrier, you've got so little time left, you just neutralise the race. And sure, if you're up ahead leading, you'll feel hard done by. But in F1, other drivers crash, and then that can affect your race if you're leading. And I just think if something like this is, I don't see how that's any more unfair than other rules that we are happy to accept a degree of unfairness, because you have to. There's no cut, and unless we're just all going to do 1 lap time trial, time attack style, and have no wheel-to-wheel racing, there's always going to be things that some people get caught out and some people don't. And finishing under a safety car is not what anyone wants to see. No. This is it's a sport. It's an entertainment product. There's a reason you add time on football when there's injuries, because you don't want to take away from that opportunity to perform. If there's an injury and someone's getting stretchered for 20 minutes, you don't want to lose 20 minutes of the game. You add that time on. I just definitely think that there's a better solution than what we have at the moment. But exactly what that solution is, I'm not too sure. I mean, I'm sure, again, red flag, you can't be chucking out red flags willy-nilly. I get that. But I think if it's clear that car can't be recovered within 3-4 laps, I think that's a red flag, which I think that kind of is probably the case anyway. Like when, I don't know, sorry, Mick, but it's another one of your shunts. When he shunted at Saudi Arabia, that was obviously clear that was going to take a long time to recover, right? And also, I think one other thing with the whole neutralising the race, one other kind of concern I have around, safety car and then trying to get the safety car in time to get the race going again is that could it result in there's a degree of like, we want to rush now. We need to rush because we're running out of laps. We need to rush to get this car recovered. And then maybe that leads to a bit of negligence or something being missed from a safety point of view. Again, I think if you chuck a red flag, that just neutralises the race. Everyone's still in position. Everyone's got fair tyre. And it gives that kind of... you're going to get people benefiting, you're going to get people losing out, but that's sport. So that's the way I feel about it anyway. That is the way I feel about it. But there's a healthy debate to be had. We all agree on the problem. It's just finding a solution. Right. Let's now talk about... I waffled for a long time there, didn't I? That's what I do best. Right. Let's talk about teams now. Break it down team by team. So, Red Bull, another win. Max Verstappen, 5 in a row. My Sebastian Vettel unbeatable record, 9 in a row, could be one hell of a jinx if Max does it. It would be one hell of a jinx. But yeah, he's looking very good at the moment. Going into Singapore... we'll see. I mean, it seems that car's strong on every track. But yeah, Max, another fantastic drive. He didn't put a foot wrong. You know what I mean? Made progress through the field like he had to. Killed it, man. As for Checo, obviously, he's starting towards the back. Did have the brake problems. I don't think he lost a huge amount of time because of that, to be honest, because the car clearly did recover. I mean, this is, in terms of intense braking, Monza turn 1 is about as intense as you get, right, on the F1 calendar. And the fact that he was able to make it through the race, I've not seen like a post-race debrief, but just off the top of my head, I think that took time away from Checo for sure, but not enough for him to be P6. So yeah, once again, I've said this before. I said this to Blake. We had Blake on the last lap yesterday. He used to be Max and Checo's performance engineer. So for people to ask, he's great because he performance engineered Checo at Force India and then Max at Red Bull. And it was just like I said to him, like, I do worry that when you look at how close, George has been able to get to Lewis, how close Carlos is able to get to Charles. Yet in the Red Bull car, there just seems to be this big gulf. Yet you've got these drivers who are proven entities, Gasly, Albon, Perez, who are all proven entities. Yet, for some reason, Red Bull aren't able to give... They don't seem to be able to give a package to both drivers that both drivers can excel. Now, don't get me wrong, Max is fantastic, but I think to not look at it like that, I think would be a disservice to the talent of Perez, to the talent of Gasly and Albon. I think that I do worry about that from a Red Bull kind of constructor's point of view long term. From a driver's point of view, it's great, like for them. It works a treat, right? And ultimately, I think that is the championship they care about the most, because that's the one that comes with all the plaudits. No one cares about the Constructors' Championship outside of getting a bit more money, let's be honest. But yeah, from that point of view, I think that gives Mercedes and Ferrari more of an opportunity to really fight for constructors. Because there is clearly, whether or not you want to prioritise one driver over it is fine, but there's clearly a big pace discrepancy now between Verstappen and Perez versus the pace discrepancy between Lewis and George, or between Carlos and Charles. But there you go. Right, not much more to say on them though. Another very good race from Red Bull. Ferrari, yeah, I thought Carlos said afterwards, didn't he? He said this was his. I heard his post-race radio like straight after, and he was like, "This was like one of my best races, if not my best race." And I think without that safety car at the end, maybe he's catching George. I think he seemed to think he would have been able to. Carlos was fantastic. Again, I'm making up all those positions it's no joke. It's no kind of walk in the park. And Carlos drove a fantastic race. I thought he was unreal. And then Charles really didn't do much wrong. He drove the race he needed to, put it on pole. I don't think he was going to catch Max. So at the end of the day, as much as it's a second and a fourth, I think from a performance point of view, and also, I don't really think Ferrari messed up. Maybe they should have put the hard on, but I don't think that probably would have worked. And Ferrari didn't do anything special, but I think the drivers were on it. They had a great race. Boom, we move. Not much more to say. I knew someone would make that joke. LFX Gaming, grow up. Right, Mercedes. Again, similar to Ferrari, I would say. Both drivers drove very well. You know, George was similar to Leclerc in the fact that started towards the front, just had a clean race. Couldn't have done much more. Didn't really do anything wrong. Just had a great race. And then Lewis was like Carlos because he was moving through the field. And again, I think it was a tougher job for Lewis than it was for Carlos, because we know that Ferrari clearly had more pace than the Mercedes. So for Lewis to make those moves, I was very impressed. I didn't think he was. I didn't think he was gonna, to be honest. But he smashed it. And yeah, just again, what's P3, P5. So again, everything I said about Ferrari, I think you can just say about Mercedes as well. Not much more to say on them. Oh yeah, no, there's nothing more to say there. Alpine, fourth best car over the course of the season, but wasn't fourth best car yesterday. I was really surprised. Chat, does anyone have more information on Fernando's issue? Because I believe, having looked at the Wikipedia, it was a water leak of some kind. Beyond him just saying wow. But what actually was wrong with that Alpine? Because we know that's rapid in a straight line. Like, we know that's a quick car. But the performance just wasn't there. Yeah, because was it ERS though? Because he thought it was ERS. And then they were like, no, nothing's wrong. And he's like, wow. Wow. One of them went, wow. I had a problem with the wow. Playing too much World of Warcraft, Fernando. What was she? I mean, there was clearly the fact that Ocon didn't make the moves through the field, I think, is more understandable, because I don't think Ocon's the racer that Alonso is. I think it's in the races we really see that gap open up. I think they're very close in one lap pace, but I think kind of like the Hamilton-Bottas comparisons at Mercedes, I think, 1 lap Valtteri could have Lewis on his day, but not really on a race distance. But yeah, like the fact that car moved backwards, I was really surprised. Really surprised. So, I mean, I don't know how much detail they'll give on that. But yeah, disappointing weekend for Alpine, I think, all points considered. And at the end of Fernando's 10-point scoring streak in a row, it's over, which is a shame. But yeah, He did exactly the random cat. He did what he could do. I think given the circumstances, right? And then McLaren, McLaren. I thought Alpine were gonna be comfortably clear of McLaren this weekend, but they've unlocked some straight line performance, and I think they're on for a P7, P8, aren't they? With Lando and Daniel respectively, if it isn't for the engine going pop towards the end. Now, we were filming, talking points that I do with Aldas, Matt, and Hayden. We were recording that last night. It should be out soon, actually. Matt's handling the upload for that one. And Matt watched pretty much the whole race from Daniel Ricciardo's point of view using F1 TV. And he had a few interesting points because obviously, at the start of the race, Lando had a shocking start. Daniel held his own, kept in front, didn't let, Gasly past. And then Daniel started on mediums, pitted early for the hard, but much earlier than he maybe should have, given he was on the mediums. And then that kind of spoiled his race because he was just covering off Gasly. And then that's why obviously Lando had the soft towards the end, was able to, rightfully, he's on a different tyre, he's much quicker. Daniel let him past. And I know, you used him as you might, maybe, I very much doubt McLaren, because you could maybe make an argument that they used Daniel to hold up Gasly to then prevent Gasly attacking Norris. But P8 for Daniel is still 4 points. That's 10 points total. So I don't think that there's a justification there. It's the same with this whole, all this stuff last week about this conspiracy theory. It's like there has to be a justification in my mind to really take that kind of conspiracy theory seriously, and there wasn't then. And for McLaren to, do over Daniel just doesn't make sense. I think they had a P7-8 on the cards there that they could have converted on pace, I think, and I don't think they needed to do that. But it didn't matter in the end because Daniel broke down. But it was a good race. As much as he didn't get points, I just hope Daniel takes confidence from this race because it was much better. And I just really hope in Singapore it's not more of the same, because that would be tough. That would be tough viewing. But we'll see. Anything else? Not much more to say on them two. No, not much more to say. Right, next team. Let's have a look at Alfa Romeo. Better. Okay, it's not been great as of late for Alfa. Cards are breaking down left, right, and centre. Bottas had got caught up in a bit of a scuffle at the start, but did make it through. He did survive. Obviously, Joey was putting a lot of pressure on Nick, which obviously I want Joe to get a point, but also don't take it away from Nick. And obviously with Ricciardo retiring, they were both able to get points. I'm just happy that Joe got a whole race distance under his belt, to be honest. Because it's not been great for Alfa Romeo. I think there is a good racing car there. It's just unlocking it consistently. I also wonder over this little break we've got now, these 2 weekends off, whether we'll get an Audi announcement. That would be cool. Because I agree, Selder. I think the points gap between the two of them doesn't represent the true performance. I think the quali head-to-head is a better representation of the reality, because that is, I think, 11.5 to Bottas. Hang on, let me I'm just doing my phone actually. Let me double check. I think that's the more fair reflection of the real gap between the two. What am I doing today? Right, head to head. Yeah, what's the actual? Because that's one where it's not good viewing from a Daniel Ricciardo point of view. I promise you that. Yeah, it is. Yeah, 11.5 to Bottas. 11.5 to Bottas quality head to head. I think that's a more fair representation of the actual delta between the two. Just the car needs to stop blowing up, exactly. And yeah, when you think of the amount of DNFs Bottas is, although I would say I think most of Valtteri's DNFs have come when he hasn't been in the top 10. I could be wrong there though, but that's just my feeling on it. We'll see, I guess. Alpha's done. Let's now talk about the other Alpha. Better. Obviously, Yuki's starting at the back, so it was always going to be a tall order for him to make his way through, and he wasn't able to. But Pierre, P8 in the end. Good points. Finally. Feels like forever since they've last been in the points. And that car's not consistent, you know? It just doesn't have a consistent car. Like that's where I think Red Bull are just, every track they're competitive. It doesn't matter what type of characteristics it has. They're just always competitive. But good drive from Gasly. Can't really say much more than that, to be honest. Aston Martin, not good qualifying. Seb was distraught to go out in Q1 for the millionth time. He always gets upset. Yeah. Shame, because I mean they weren't quick this weekend, were they? Aston Martin weren't quick this weekend. So I think as much as obviously they didn't have penalties, I do think they probably would have got swallowed up. Maybe not. Maybe the DRS train would have saved them. But neither driver had penalties, so they did benefit, didn't they? Oh yeah, let me find this. I want to find this video of this scrap that the two of them had. So apparently, hang on, Vettel Stroll. I'm just going to type Vettel Stroll into Twitter. Videos. Anything come up? Just want to find people saying about there was a scrap between the two of them, but I can't see anything. Can anyone in live chat have a link or something? I don't know. Whatever. We can come back to that. We can come back to these two. Let's talk about Haas. Slow in a straight line. Very slow in a straight line. Danny's crash. Brilliant. Mick had a good drive though. I think, you know, all things considered, he had good pace towards the end, was coming through the field again with the lack of practice. He knows he needs to, again, I think for Haas, I think for Williams, less so for Alpine, but I think for Haas and Williams, there's no real rush to confirm their driver lineups. I think let's just see how Mick ends the season. I think evaluate other options 100%. Although, yeah, no. For Williams now, they have to just announce that they just have to replace Latifi, don't they? Magnussen had a bit of a shocker in qualifying, kept invalidating his laps, and they were like last and second last. Not great. I don't really have anything more to say. Clearly. Williams. Shall we all have a laugh at me? Shall we all laugh at my misfortune? Right, I've got something to let's see how quickly I can get this. There we go. There it is. Let's get this saved. Boom. Yeah, do that. Save it on my downloads, and then let's just drag this L onto the screen, shall we? If you're If you're well, no, this only comes in video version. I'm not doing the. I will next year. I'll upload all of these as audio only as well. But yeah. For real, don't write Latifi off. A decent result this weekend. Monza last year was probably his best performance in F1 to date. That combined with the absolute speed of that car could be on for a worldie. I didn't even write. If I'd have wrote don't write Nick off, I could have been like, oh, I meant the other one. Look, all right. We all know this is a cap, okay? I'm wearing one for a reason. Look, all right. Hear me. Okay, my theory. I think my theory was sound, okay? Because Monza 2021 was a very good result for Nick, okay? He only really got passed by George because of the safety car. And you know what? I think what I've gleaned from this, okay, is that I think Latifi was better in that Williams last year than he's in this Williams this year. I think he was a better driver in that Williams last year. Because I think George is better than Alex, but I think that gap between Alex and Latifi is bigger than the gap between George and Latifi. But I think just Latifi was more comfortable in that car last year and was able to very occasionally get in amongst it. And I think Monza was a prime example last year. And I think this performance just illustrated a few things. It is illustrated that Latifi is nowhere near the level in this car. He's just not. I think you could have always, but maybe just George is really good, and maybe just Alex is really good. They're great, don't get me wrong, but do I think that Albon is like a country mile clear of the... No, obviously I don't. I think he's pretty in the middle. Maybe kind of top end of the middle. In terms of like talent right now, form, ability. But like you can't be getting done by the reserve who's jumped in at such late notice, who is a rookie technically, hasn't raced a full F1 season, has done plenty of practice, but hasn't raced. And sure, this was the best track for someone to jump in, right? Because compared to Singapore, I mean, if it had been Singapore next race, and someone had to jump in, I think that would have been too much to ask. I think they couldn't have gone with DeVries because, that physically, I don't know what they would have done in that situation, to be honest, because, I mean, DeVries could barely get out of the car anyway. Look, I just think that, I think what we saw from... Because I still think that Williams is probably, all round, probably the worst car. Probably. It's definitely down there. Because in certain tracks, it's nowhere. This track really played to Williams' strengths, and that's why they were very kind of optimistic going into this weekend, and rightly so. And the fact that obviously DeVries, starting a bit higher up, benefits from a lot of penalties below him. DRS train, he's got that straight line speed to defend, so it's a bit easier. Low drag, exactly. I think it depends on the track. I think on a track like this, the Williams is clearly better than the Aston Martin. But I think on a track, on something more tight and twisty, or something with more medium speed, I think the Aston Martin's quicker than the Williams. I mean, they're very much, fighting for the scraps. Because, Vettel's got points, Lance has got points, Alex has got points multiple times. Now Nick's got points in the Williams. We're not seeing like a car anywhere near as far off as the Williams was in like 2019 or the Haas was last year, But yeah. This has to stop now. I'm sorry. If Williams want to be considered a serious team, that DeVries has now forced their hand, because he's proven with any equivalent. They only started 2 positions from each other in the race. DeVries started P8, Latifi started P10, and Nick lost Latifi. Sorry, can't call them Nick because they got both got the same first name. Latifi lost 4 positions, but basically off the start, and then was right at the back. Another few laps later, in that Williams, that's the fastest car in a straight line. Wasn't able to. It's just not good enough. It's not good enough. I feel for Latifi on a human level, of course, but this is sport, and he's clearly not demonstrating the aptitudes to be on the grids. You look at what Zhou Guanyu's doing in the Alfa Romeo. We were all very. I agree. I was part of that. I was very sceptical around Zhou coming in. Looking at his track record, it was good, but was it enough? And you know that there's reasons beyond his driving that he came in. But you know what? Zhou's come in and he's out-qualified Valtteri Bottas on numerous occasions, and he's put in a good bloody shift. And we've just never seen that from Latifi. It's mad that, when DeVries won his F2 title, it was Latifi who finished second, and he was about 52 points behind, which is a significant gap, but it's we've seen it in F2 this year, right? Drogovic, I think, has deserved the title, but has he deserved to win it by as many points as he has? No, I think there's been, Porsche's had plenty of incidents. We had loads of, Doohan and Sargent both out last race through no real fault of their own. I think that gap it doesn't tell the whole story. Drogovic still deserved it, no doubt. And Nick deserved his title. But Nick, both DeVries and Latifi won 4 races in that 2019 F2 season. In that spec of car, in that type of machinery, Latifi was competitive. You could definitely argue he wasn't the best, right, for sure. And that 2019, I know Drogovic was consistent, but I don't think that the points gap that it is. You look at how many times Porsche's engine's blown up. It shouldn't be as big as it is. Whatever. You look at Latifi in that light and you're like, okay, yeah, he's not setting the world alight, but P2 in Formula 2, yes, it's his 3rd season, but on paper that looks okay. But in this F1 car, he's just never been able to hook it up. And the fact that you could put the blame on Williams to an extent because you're they haven't given him the package potentially, but then they've always been able to give the package to George and to Alex. Not the package for them to win races, not even the package to score points necessarily, but George and Alex in that Williams have always looked all right. You know what I mean? They've always looked okay. And Latifi has always looked miles off unless it's been changeable conditions. Yeah, exactly. It's not Tao's problem that his engine blows up, So the buck has to stop with the driver in this instance. It's not good enough. Go Latifi memes all you like. He needs to be replaced. And Williams needs, whether it's DeVries, whether it's Sargent, whether it's Ricciardo, whether it's Holcomb, I don't know. I don't know who I think given DeVries how good a job he did, I think before yesterday, I was still very much I think it should be Logan. But I think after yesterday, I think the right thing to do for Williams, I think the right thing to do sportingly, I think Nick DeVries has earned the chance to have a full season in F1. And if that's at Williams, then I think Williams are getting a great driver. I mean, look at the job he did jumping in late notice. Imagine how good a job he'd do. If he had plenty more notice, if the team had more notice. There's one thing, right? So Alex Albon is 1.86 meters tall, okay? Which is, what's that in feet? That's 6'1", okay? So Alex is a little bit taller than me. Nick DeVries is 1.67 meters tall, okay? So he's 19 centimeters shorter than Alex Albon, which is 5 foot, not even 5'5". It's 5'5", basically. I think I think Hannah's 5'5". So you've got a driver who's 5'5", jumping into the car of someone who's 6'1", having driven an Aston Martin in the morning with a completely different steering wheel and all that set up, right? Back into a Williams. No prep, not got the fitness to get through a race. Like, not driven a Formula One car in anger before. Like, in the morning, he's just sitting there having a coffee. In the afternoon, he's qualifying when you've got to be full confidence. And he beat Latifi twice because he had his first time deleted and still beat Latifi. Like, it's crazy. It is kind of, obviously to much less of an extent, but obviously when George Russell jumped into Lewis Hamilton's Mercedes at Sakir, that was a very tall driver jumping in a very short driver's car. So there were challenges from a kind of opposite point of view. The difference was that George had already been racing. He had the physicality. He'd been racing a Williams all year. And yeah, it's mad impressive how good a job Nick did. And I think this illustrates to Williams, and I'm sure this is, hopefully fully opened their eyes to the fact that that car isn't necessarily the worst car on the grid. I think overall, maybe, but I think in certain conditions, it's definitely not the worst car. Yet with, unfortunately, Latifi is dragging that team down. Unfortunately. I mean, P9 in the Constructors, if they'd have had 2 Albons at the start of the season, or if they'd have had Albon DeVries at the start of the season, I think P9 in the Constructors is a much more realistic thing. For sure. But yeah. Right, okay. Hour 15 I've been waffling for. Any more topics to discuss? So I saw, again, so for when we do the last lap, I do have the commentary in one ear. That's more just to listen for like team radios and stuff. And I can't really, because obviously we're chatting all the time. I did hear there was some people talking about stuff with like the comms. Was the comms particularly bad this weekend? And I saw a few people on social media moaning about that. But most of the race, just, yeah. People booing at the end. Look, I don't have a massive issue with booing. I think obviously when people are booing, the context of booing and why people are booing, you don't know. Like, I'm sure there were some, there's always malicious people, unfortunately. I think, yeah, obviously booing. Yeah, Max was getting stick earlier in the week. There were some videos coming out of, some fans saying some pretty nasty stuff about his mum, like in chants and that, which is just like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, I'm all for a bit of sporting, like a bit of banter being thrown, but that's just grim. I cannot be your dad, I'm afraid, Epic Gamer Boy. Obviously, finishing under a safety car would also merit, especially with 6 laps to go. I'm sure that's part of it as well. But yeah, there's a lot of a lot of stories from a race weekend of fans. The conduct of, which it always is the case. It's always a small minority who tarnish it, and the thing is, it has to be addressed. You know what I mean? You can't just sit there and not address it. And it feels like F1 isn't doing enough. The security teams aren't, whether there's more training needed, whether there's just more diligence, because it's a really bad look. It's an awful look, and it's making people, it's putting people off going to races. We've seen bad fan behaviour throughout, and I think this has always been a thing. Unfortunately, I know a lot of it. I think it's easy to be like, oh, there's more casual fans now, so because of Drive to Survive, blah blah blah, and maybe that's part of it. I don't know. But I think, I think the thing is that people are more prepared now, because we've all got a video camera, right, on us at all times now, so you can call people out like for acting like scumbags, and I just think that I think the sport needs to do more. 100%. Like, just get more security. It's the richest sport in the world. Get more security. Also, I know Monza. A lot of people had a really bad time getting in and out, which, you could forgive that for a venue like Miami, given it was like the first year. But actually, Miami was pretty good with all that. On the Saturday anyway, it was all right. I didn't really, didn't have any problems getting in and out. But Monza, like, it's been on the calendar for a long time. You can't tell me that the infrastructure isn't there, and it should be there to deal with the demand. So, I just think that track specifically as well, and we saw the same at Le Castellet as well. Like, they need to step up. Although not that there's going to be another French Grand Prix anytime soon, by the looks of it. I think that's confirmed now, isn't it? So yeah, that was a shame. What else is there to discuss? Oh yeah, the F3 finale. So I didn't. So I watched. Which race did I watch? I watched the F3 sprint race, but I was out for the feature race, so I didn't actually watch it. Was it like Victor Martin has won the championship, but then he had a penalty, didn't he? Because I know it was Behrman and Maloney fighting. Big up Ollie Behrman, by the way, Chelmsford's finest. And and then there was there was something weird going on with like time penalties and that. I didn't watch it, so I don't have too much of an opinion, to be honest. But I think Victor and Zane and Ollie and Stanek, like, these kids I thought were really impressive this year. I think F3 is the category for scrapping. If you could give me, I've said this before, right, and it might sound a bit wet, but whatever. Like, if you could give me the opportunity to drive a racing car, an F1 or F2 or an F3 car, I'd probably pick the F3, because in an F1 car, obviously you get that exhilaration from like putting the throttle down and like, oh my God. But then like you're going creeping. In an F3 car, I'd feel confident. I'd be like, I'm gonna send this, because if I crash, then it's not the end of the world. If I crash an F1 car, it is the end of the world. I'd just send it. I know, Shanky. I do waffle a lot, don't I? And but yeah, F3 was very competitive this year, which was exciting. I think F2 was pretty competitive. I know Drogovic ended up running away with it in the end, but I think Porsche, again, should have been closer in points. And yeah, obviously Drogovic winning the championship. Listen, I think at least a team needs to snap him up in some kind of reserve capacity. I'm not sure, because who reserve driver wise, obviously Haas and Ferrari have an Alfa Romeo. I don't know if Alfa Romeo no, they have Kubica, don't they? Haas and Ferrari have Giovinazzi. Williams have Aitken, but obviously he wasn't there, so it's DeVries. Maybe if DeVries gets that seat, but then I suppose they'd want to use Sargent as their reserve. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think Drogovic, again, has earned, not deserves, has earned the opportunity to at least have some kind of reserve role, reserve capacity, and then just see where things go. Look, at the end of the day, there's only 20 seats in F1. So a career in IndyCar, a career in GTs, a career in Superform. I don't know. Like, is he going to get a seat in F1? It would be great to see, but I wouldn't hold my breath, But Felipe's still very young. I think he's only 22. So yeah, there's potential opportunities. Is there anything else I wanted to talk about? So get well soon, Alex. Don't know how long. Has anyone in chat had a appendicitis before? Oh yeah, I'll get Minton. He is literally right down there. Hello, Minton. I'm standing up this stream, so I'm going to put him on my shoulder. How long does an appendicitis take to? Because you've got to have a. Hello, mate. There you go. Good boy. Because it's surgery, isn't it? So, is it 3 weeks? So for anyone who's had their appendix out, how long? Because obviously, the thing for Alex, right? He's got to obviously have the operation. He's got to then recover enough to be prepared to jump in to the car for the Singapore Grand Prix, which is the most physically demanding of any Grand Prix on the calendar because of the humidity, street circuit, a lot of turns. You're cranking the wheel a lot, you know. Oh, thank you, Tim, mate. Say, look, should we buy you treats with that 20 Aussie dollars, mate? Hopefully he's good by then. And yeah, obviously it is fortunate that this has come at a stage where there is, you know, there's no race this weekend, there's no race next weekend, and he's got all of that following weekend to fully recover. So hopefully he will be good by then. If he's not, then DeVries better be getting on the gym. He better be getting wham, because if he struggled at Monza, then if he does have to deputise for Singapore, then that's also going to be difficult. But yeah, I'm sure, obviously, I guess it's good for Williams that they know that there is this option that they can, I think, kind of quite comfortably fall back on. And I think honestly, actually, from Williams' point of view, taking my obviously desire to see Alex succeed at every opportunity, I think that from Williams' point of view, if they're not going to want to rush Alex back. First of all, because they shouldn't, because this is a serious thing, right? You shouldn't be rushing back in that. But also, you know, to give it a bit of extra time and give Nick DeVries another go in that car on a very different track as well, could be another good opportunity to evaluate. And at the end of the day, what have Williams got to lose? They're going to finish last in the Constructors anyway. You know, I think that potentially there's... We'll see how it goes. I'm sure, like, if Alex is completely ready, then they'll want him in that car. But if he's only 99% of the way and they're still a little bit unsure, I think potentially keeping DeVries in that car might be the right choice. But yeah. Anyway, right, yeah, he's tired, isn't he? I don't know how he's so tired. You just sleep all day, don't you? And party all night. No, he doesn't do that. Well, maybe he does. Right, thank you all for coming. Appreciate you all sticking around. Do you want to say something to the people? No? Do you want to say it? No? Okay. Video definitely coming this week. It's already finished, which is amazing. I never have videos done this early in advance, so that's great. And then I think next week I might have to do a video that I've been thinking about doing for a very long time, but I haven't, and I think now's the right time to do it. And it will be a banger, and it will get some people upset, but you know what? I really want to make the video. The only clue I'm going to give is that if you've watched my... you might have watched a video of mine where I swap the drivers of controversial incidents. Well, there's a certain incident that I think needs addressing because I think we want to challenge some biases. But anyway, thank you all for coming. Appreciate you all taking the time. Thank you to everyone who super chatted as well. Wherever you are in the world, stay hydrated, be good, be happy. Minton's taking my limelight here. He wants to speak to you. Cheers, everyone. Bye. Have a great time. Bye.